In 1977, Camp Scott was a beautiful, lively place, and it had been that way for nearly 50 years at that point. However, that summer would be the last days that it remained open. What happened there would cast a dark cloud over this place that can still be felt to this day. In the early morning hours of June 13th, 1977, 3 young girls were discovered dead just 100 yards away from their tent. They had been sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled. 2 of the girls were left inside of their sleeping bags. The events of that morning would leave deep wounds in the community that felt impossible to heal. And the man accused of the crime would be found not guilty. And so many years later, it's still a mystery what happened that early summer morning. Lori Lee Farmer was 8 years old in the summer of 1977. She was trying to decide between camp at the YMCA or camp with the Girl Scouts. She couldn't decide, so her mother decided for her. And her mother said that was a decision that she has to deal with for the rest of her life. But Lori had been excited to go to camp, and she had been excited to make new friends. Lori was one of 5 children, and her father was the emergency room director at the Tulsa St. John's Medical Center. The day of June 13th, he received a call from the executive director of the Girl Scouts. And that day, they were the 3rd phone call that they had made. The first was to their insurance company, then to their attorneys, and then to the families. He also said they did not explain what happened to the girls. They only told them that there was an accident. Lori's mother started the Oklahoma chapter of Parents of Murdered Children organization. She said that she loved being able to talk about Lori and tell people about her, and not just about her death. Lori's parents, along with Denise Milner's parents, sued the Girl Scouts of America in an attempt to hold someone accountable for the girls' safety that night. However, they would ultimately not win this case either. Doris Denise Milner was 10 years old in the summer of 1977. She was described as being shy but friendly. She loved watching TV and playing with her little sister. She was excited to go to camp, but she was feeling anxious about leaving her family. She really just wanted to stay home, but her mother encouraged her to go because it would help her become more independent. She told her that she could call her any time and they would come get her if she wanted them to. Denise was especially excited to start school in the fall because she was just accepted into a prestigious Tulsa area magnet school. She was an exceptional child with a bright future. And the first night of camp, she had actually written home to her mother about how much she did not like it and how much she really just wanted to come home. Michele Heather Guse was 9 years old in the summer of 1977. She had been to Camp Scott the previous summer and was really excited to go back again this year. The morning her mother took her to the bus, she had gotten up and come downstairs to sit on her lap and tell her that she would miss her. She also wanted to make sure that her mother would not forget to water her plants. She loved her African violets very much. Her father felt like Michele somehow knew she was not going to be coming home. She hugged everyone goodbye and made sure to tell them that she loved them. Her father said that, incredibly, he had no idea that something horrific had happened to Michele and the other girls. He was told it was an accident, just like Lori's parents. He said that he did not know the details about what happened that night to his daughter until he watched the television programs about the murders. So something really concerning actually happened months before all of the campers arrived. In April of 1977, an on-site cadet weekend was being held at Camp Scott. Camp aide Michele Hoffman found that her tent had been ransacked. She had brought a box of donuts that were now empty, and inside, along with the crumbs, was a small notepad. The notepad had several scribbled pages that read, "Kill, kill, kill," over and over. Then one of the pages said, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls." The note was obviously very concerning. The girls brought the note to the camp director, who said that she would look into it. And at some point, it was said that some other girls confessed to leaving the note, and because pranks were really commonplace at camp, it was just dismissed just like that. A couple of months later, the Girl Scouts would arrive for their first day of camp on June 12th, 1977. The girls were all from Tulsa or the surrounding towns. They had taken a bus trip from Tulsa to Camp Scott. The night of June 12th, rain was falling over the camp and thunder rumbling in the distance. The campers were told to turn in early. The rain was starting to pick up, so the planned activities around the fire would have to be canceled, so the girls were told to return to their tents. For context, here is a map of Camp Scott. The girls were in Kiowa Unit. This was the most isolated unit in the camp. It was situated near the edge of a forest, and this is important for later on in the story. Tent 8 was the most isolated tent in the entire camp. It was obscured by a restroom so the counselors could not see it, and it was kind of off in a corner by itself. Earlier, the girls had written letters home to their parents about the first day of camp. Denise, in particular, was not having a good time. She told her mother that she wanted to come home and spend time with her family. The girls were supposed to have a 4th tent mate, but because of an error, the girl was put in another tent, or she was sick and didn't end up coming. I'm not sure if those stories, if they're the same thing. They were supposed to be another girl there, but there wasn't. Other than the inconvenient storm rolling through the camp, nothing was out of ordinary that night, and all the campers were in their tents, seemingly safe from the storm. And they were all looking forward to a sunny day tomorrow for their first full day of camp. At around midnight, one of the camp counselors in Kiowa Unit wakes to strange guttural sounds outside of her tent. So she gets out of her tent and she walks around to see what it is.
I woke up and I heard noise coming from an area kind of off the road by our tent. It was kind of intermittent. It wasn't continuous. Something like a cross between a frog and a bullhorn or something. It was low and kind of guttural. It wasn't language. It didn't really seem human. It didn't sound like any animal I'd ever heard. And I woke Dee just momentarily to say, "Do you hear that?" And it sounds like an animal or something. And so I went out with my flashlight and started walking over that way. And it kind of like how an animal would do if you pointed a light at it and stopped what it was doing. And still couldn't really tell where it was coming from, but it didn't, I guess I'm not too far removed from, the horror movies or whatever. I didn't want to go over and have it jump out of the bush at me or something. So I turned around and went back and walked the tents, walked around the unit, and everything was quiet. All the tents were quiet, and I went back to bed and went to sleep.
Another counselor in the Comanche unit noticed a dim light in the tree line surrounding the camp. So this is not the other counselor looking around trying to find that sound. This light is coming from the forest around the camp. The counselor knew that this area should be empty. It was really late and no one should be over there. The counselors shined their light toward this person and the dim light shut off. But after a while they said that that dim light would reappear, and it seemed to be headed toward Coyote Unit. And the light reappeared again at 2 a.m. and appeared on one side of the Coyote Unit and then would turn off and appear on the other side.
As the counselors slept, the flaps of the tent were taken off hook screws. Purses and glasses were taken. The light then moved towards tent 6. The tent flap was jerked open, and the light flooded the tent. The flap dropped back down, and the light moved towards the back of tent 8.
The counselor would even hear a scream at one point, but because it was a camp and pranks and all kinds of shenanigans were normal, it was almost expected to hear screams during the night, especially with it being a Girl Scouts camp. Girls tend to scream over nothing. No one could have imagined that something so horrible was actually happening so close by. The morning comes, the sun slowly rises, and the Kiowa camp counselor wakes. She had gotten up early and headed toward the showers when she noticed something near an oak tree, not far off the trail. At first, only one girl is discovered, Denise. Lori and Michele were still inside of their sleeping bags. The sight of one dead child was enough to send everyone into a panic. But the nightmare would just keep getting worse. Inside the tent was blood splattered all over the place. There was a bloody shoe print, a bloody handprint was discovered inside the tent as well. It appeared as if the girls were attacked inside of their tent and then dragged outside to where they were discovered. When the police arrived, they immediately closed off the crime scene and evacuated the camp. They told everyone there was an accident, including family. The police set up security around the camp and began to process the crime scene. But officers kept seeing a man in the distance, watching them. From the forest, they would try to find the man, but they could never catch up to him. The police even put out lines in the forest to see if something was walking through the forest. The lines would be broken, but ultimately they wouldn't be sure if it was animals or not. And it was discovered that there was a man rumored to be living in a cave nearby that had escaped prison years earlier. Gene Leroy Hart had been serving time for kidnapping, raping, and leaving 2 pregnant women for dead when he escaped. He had been seen living in a cave near the camp's location, just 3 miles away.
In Tulsa in 1966, Gene Hart kidnapped at gunpoint 2 pregnant women. He bound them with plastic duct tape and nylon rope, forced them into the trunk of his automobile, and drove them toward the oil refineries of West Tulsa.
After he stopped, I opened the trunk and got me out. And put me in the back seat. That's when he raped me. First time. And then sodomized me. And I was begging him not to. He was just incoherent. He wasn't speaking, he was just making strange noises. Real strange noises. It wasn't real, like somebody in pain, or somebody just ouch, or a growl, or it was, never, his own little sound that he has, or he made.
Gene Hart grew up in the area that Camp Scott was located. You can actually see here on this map how close Hart's mother's home was to where Camp Scott is located. Hart was raised on this land. He was taught to hunt and fish in this area. He knew every valley and stream and cave in the entire area. He also regularly practiced Native American rituals. Tobacco is sacred to Native Americans, and it is very common for them to burn it when they're going through something and they need guidance of some kind. And searchers would say that they saw smoke rising from the forest near the camp, and they believed that was Hart burning a fire nearby. And dogs would be brought in to try and find the man's location, but they couldn't. And this seems to be a good place to mention that Hart was very good friends with a local medicine man. One in particular actually helped him hide out for several months when he was on the run from law enforcement. The medicine man was supposedly helping him learn to shapeshift, to turn into a great owl in order to better escape and evade capture. And this was supposedly how he had managed to escape prison twice. And this detective in particular seemed to believe Hart did have some kind of otherworldly power.
That there were so many things happening that a good investigator had to be concerned about, and then someone who was raised in the Indian culture, things that were starting to happen during this investigation, like even the tracking dogs, you know. We were concerned about the rumors of him being able to shape change and to move about, and things that he had said to jailers, and laughing at them about how he'd eluded them and above and below, and when the dogs struck a trail from the camp, and they went through the camp there and they hit that meadow, and they went to the clearing of that out in the middle of that field, and they just stopped and they quit and they just walked in circles, and that trail didn't go anywhere. From in the middle of that field, for some reason, the scent just died right out in the middle of the field, like he went off into the air. And you saw things like that just compounded what you had heard as in the investigative talk and the rumors, and you were concerned. I got concerned.
One day, a rancher discovered a cave full of all kinds of strange objects.
Agent Linville also found tape and plastic material used to cover the flashlight lens, 2 photographs of women, a red pair of lace panties, and the glasses taken from the counselor's tent in Kiowa unit,
including several pairs of women's glasses, newspaper clippings, a photo of 2 women, and many other stolen items that could be linked to Camp Scott the night of the murders.
The newspaper, tape, and plastic material linked the cave to the flashlight found next to the bodies. But who had used the cave? The only clue was the crumpled pictures. Pictures of the mystery women were printed in newspapers and shown on television across the nation.
Hart had a weird thing for women's glasses. He liked to steal them and wear them. When he kidnapped those 2 pregnant women, he actually stole their glasses. And when he was arrested for those incidents, he was found wearing one of those women's glasses. Hart would lead police on one of the largest and longest manhunts in Oklahoma State history. When Hart was finally captured, he was wearing glasses he had stolen from the camp.
And he ducked back inside, slammed the back door. Adrenaline pumping pretty good about that time. And looked at Jack Lay, who had pulled his car in front of me, and he was at a dead run by this time. And he kicked the door of this old house. We burst in. There was a rather large Indian man, and he broke to run out of the front room. And Jack Lay said, "Do you want to die today?" And the man stopped. He went ahead and was cuffed, and we took him outside.
Hart had been living with a medicine man. He would even gain the backing of a large part of the Native American community because of the connections to the Cherokee tribe and racial tensions in the area during that time. Hart was able to use those issues to his advantage.
The trial day had finally arrived. Many of the people in the front of the courtroom had been among the 400 Locust Grove and Pryor residents who had attended a benefit chicken dinner which helped raise money for Gene Hart's defense fund.
The man even had people outside supporting him by protesting the police, the prosecution, and even the families during his trial.
We were the enemy when we walked in the courtroom. We seemed to be the guilty party. And everyone was rallying around the hero. And it was a shock.
A friend of ours who said, after reading an article about Hart and talking about his athletic ability, that he expected him to be drafted by the Dallas Cowboys after this. It was strange. It was very strange. It was strange to be up there and go in a restaurant to eat and see a jar with to donate money for Hart's defense.
I didn't really feel that we were amongst a lot of friends.
It was a crazy time to live in northeastern Oklahoma, period. The case had become high profile because of the nature of the case and because Gene Hart was successfully using his position as a Native American in society to assert the police were trying to frame him for the murders because they desperately needed to arrest someone. And because using DNA evidence was still in its absolute infancy, there was not exactly a way to match him indefinitely to the DNA left on the scene yet. However, they were able to get pretty damn close. There was some DNA on the scene that matched Gene, but then there were some samples that didn't. Could he have acted with others that night? One would think that it would be difficult to subdue 3 small girls by yourself. There was a shoe print that was a size 9.5. Gene Hart's shoe size was a size 11. There was a fingerprint found on a flashlight lens that did not match Hart. This woman sat on the jury, and she said that she does not believe that Hart was innocent, and she does not believe that he acted alone.
There's a lot of manufactured evidence, a lot of sloppiness in the procedure.
Leila Ramsey was one of 6 women who sat on the jury that heard Hart's case. She remembers testimony from an Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agent that created grave doubts.
Larry Bowles was on the stand being interviewed. I mean, we was on he was talking to the jury, and Garvin Isaacs asked him, said, were any pictures taken the day over there when they arrested Gene Hart? And he said, no, not any. He said, you didn't take any pictures? And they said, no. We're sitting here looking at 8 by 10 glossies of that very man posed like he'd bagged a big game. He lied to us.
Jurors returned a verdict of not guilty. It was vindication for Hart and his supporters, but Ramsey says the jury's verdict actually had little to do with clearing Hart.
I'm not saying he's not guilty, but I am saying that the evidence showed he was not one person done it by themselves. We all 12 agreed on that there was enough evidence to show that it had been more than one person.
We spoke with one of the investigators who helped gather evidence in the Hart case about the allegations that evidence was planted. He vehemently told Stateline he never saw anyone plant evidence, nor did he hear of a conspiracy among the 6 investigating agencies to frame Gene Leroy Hart.
But regardless, she and the other jurors decided to send the verdict of not guilty. Hart was taken to another facility to serve out his sentence for the assaults on the pregnant women. Not long after the trial, he was working out one morning when he died suddenly of a massive heart attack. Some believe he could have been killed by fellow inmates because a large quantity of drugs went missing the day before. But with him went any real hope of receiving justice for the girls and their family. The police say they continued to look for the girls' killers. The girls' families have never given up on finding out all who was involved that night and bringing them to justice. And they remember their beautiful girls every day, and they keep their memory alive. And if the girls were alive today, they would all be in their 50s, but they're forever frozen as children. Now, there are a lot of rumors online about different people possibly being involved, perhaps even a camp counselor being involved, because there were traces of female DNA found, but they were so minuscule and so degraded that they couldn't even figure out if that DNA belonged to the girls or not. So take that as you will. There are a couple of men that were named suspects at one point. These 3 men here, only one of which is still alive, Sonny James, had been serving a prison sentence from 2011 and was recently released from all that I can gather in December of 2020 from Arkansas Federal Prison. So he's free now. His uncle, Frank Justice, died in 1997. Bill Stevens supposedly knew Gene Hart and had reportedly been seen around the camp the morning of the murders by several witnesses. He was arrested not long after the Girl Scout murders for rape and kidnapping and was sentenced to 25 to life. And not long after Gene Hart died of a heart attack, the Kansas State Bureau of Investigation released a report that said that Bill Stevens had confessed to the Girl Scout murders. But no additional charges would ever be filed against him, and he would actually end up committing suicide in 1984. Sonny James was 16 at the time of the murders. The men had supposedly told many people about their involvement in the murders. The grand jury petition that named these suspects died because Ted LaTurner, the man who was hired by former Sheriff Paul Smith to investigate these murders, had left town and abandoned the petition, and it was never able to work out. Those are the other suspects named. That's just about it. I think I've covered everything. So that's where I'm going to end this video. And I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.